Hello and welcome wherever you are in the world. Logon is an online magazine of the spiritual school of the Golden Rosycross. We hope that our podcast will provide you with food for thought, inspiration for new questions and impulses in your research for new answers.
In his book, The Ova Prophecy, Michel Desmarquet sketches the wondrous properties of these undivided human beings. In his description, it is only human beings to whom the Creator gave the possibility of regeneration to arrive at a hermaphrodite being, a being on the way to perfection, growing spiritually through 9 stages of development. Stages that correspond with the dimensions of universal reality, which can be indicated as planetary as well as psychic, energetic. That human being, according to Desmarquet, exists from the 5th dimension and then has slightly more feminine than masculine qualities, especially in appearance. Face and elegance of movement are more determined by the values of harmony and beauty, with which a characterization of masculine damsel seems more relevant than, for example, feminine squire. The book ends with a powerful tribute to the Creator of the All, which he interprets medically. The tribute has the quality and tenor of Hermes' song of praise. Love and compassion. If human consciousness is on its way to Aquarian values, how does the vibrational increase of unity, freedom, and love take place? If the fire ether of the Christ impulse can be assimilated, what is the role of love in it? That is a love that gives attention to the world and mankind from a high unity and in freedom. In this century, it is becoming more and more clear that this attention love is not so much a love of. Aquarian love is more impersonal and without regard for the person. Empathy can, through too much attachment, suck people into a negative emotion, but compassion indicates involvement. The attention of compassion remains positively focused, but does not attach itself unnecessarily for a long time as a radiant force. In his book, Humankind, A Hopeful History, Rutger Bregman says, "Temper your empathy, train your compassion, and pay attention to the important difference." Whereas the age of Pisces was still in the triad, faith, hope, and love, but most of it is love. Aquarius teaches us unity, freedom, love, and most of it is love. Non-attachment prevents loss. In the vibration of Aquarius, loving is not a form of attachment, simply because there is no loss, because there is no grasping for, in the realization that what you hold on to is lost again. But what you let go of remains with you. And finally, the mystery, that which you release comes to you as renewed. That is the energy management. The energy management of receiving everything, giving everything away, and therefore renewing everything. A natural state in that reality is love without attachment. Only from freedom can the love be given, radiated, bestowed. Unity does not take this freedom hostage, because the starting point is, in my Father's house there are many dwellings, which is an eminently Aquarian statement. If unity were to take freedom hostage, there would only be enforced unity, not the end of subjugation, which is one of the characteristics that is so important for the Aquarian experience. Slavery? For this, it is necessary that the current slave state is realized, that we realize that we are enslaved, that we ourselves contribute to create and maintain that slavery. The dependence on digital information in general, and the smartphone in particular, can be seen as an example of this. Which is not to say that the serfdom to the financial economic system would be less. The current pandemic is consciously or unconsciously used to promote this dependence. Communication outside the smartphone, iPad, laptop, and computer is made more difficult. For example, there is the plan of a health app that you are supposed to install. In a positive light, one could also say that social distancing, another measure that society seems to impose upon itself, promotes impersonal attention in accordance with the modern love vibration of the Aquarius soul. After all, compassion certainly remains possible, and negative empathy is often avoided by no physical contact. And a more than Victorian physical distance from each other also clearly diminishes the attention for and the attachment to people, things, and objects. Diffuse fear. But a closer look will make everyone realize that with this approach, there is no such thing as freedom. The basis of social distancing is fear and the desire for control, both contrary to Aquarius's starting point for soul formation. Love, in her higher regard, has no chance on that basis. Much of the human relationships in the coming Aquarius age will depend on the progress of consciousness of people in the shift, the vibrational increase that is going on. This is often tied to the astral factor. Will this increase bring us to a level of truly lived unity through the action of light forces within us? Or will we allow ourselves to return to a new dialectical starting point? Until the struggle of all against all puts an end to everything. Self-realization of the observer within that unity, the one who disengages himself, has acquired a very important ability in his new independence. It is generally referred to as self-realization, and is actually an Aquarian act par excellence. It is obvious that self-realization needs freedom, as long as that freedom moves with love and unity. Perception is central here. Now, there is something special about the human being as an observer. An observer co-creates reality and helps to shape the reality he or she observes. The point of view of yourself as an observer is decisive for the reality you experience. This is a quantum mechanical insight that directly determines the great importance of the observer as a potentially creating being. Observation would thus become magical as a creative act. That also gives form and content to reality. Now, of course, we are sober enough to see that this creative perception cannot encompass the whole of reality. Can create. You cannot say, I create everything. That is nonsense. Material reality cannot simply be dematerialized or immaterialized with an old concept. You cannot transform it into something essentially different by magical viewing. That would amount to a nice variant of wishful thinking. But of course, we can load material reality with our attention, and that certainly has an effect. Paying attention to something or someone means magnetic energy. Usually, that energy is charged with sympathy or antipathy because we have an imperfect and immature awareness of good and evil. Our perception has not yet advanced to disinterested observation. That is to say, an observation in which our desire and will do not stand between us and the object of perception. Limits to the perception of the five senses. What attention is paid, it is mainly a gift, with which sense, for example, eye and ear, determines the level of vibration of magnetic action. You draw a magnetic line with it, as it were. This line comes from your consciousness. All of this is very direct and extremely fast. But attention is not just giving. In receiving attention, or rather being open to the radiations of the world, there is a limit expressed in wavelength and frequency. That boundary is, of course, in the first place found in the amount of impressions you can integrate into your consciousness and your daily life. If you can no longer cope with the amount of impressions because you can no longer determine your attention, it is better to segment. Temporarily park things than to integrate them. But much more important is the quality both in giving and receiving attention, because with that consciousness can build or co-create. Now that a time of increasing the astral factor of Earth and humanity has arrived, there is a natural limit to receiving attention energy, and this can be crossed. In art, this quality is reflected in its beauty. At the height of beauty, when receiving impulses, there is often emotion, which means that the aesthetic impulse touches us so strongly that it brings tears to our eyes. If we can only just manage to do this, an elevation of consciousness or an experience of intense silence and harmony can arise. Why is it a boundary for some? Because then the beauty impulse cannot be endured, which one intuitively realizes, followed by the disabling of receptiveness. One knows almost immediately on perception that one cannot process the beauty. This can even occur through contemplation in nature. Because of its high quality, beauty closes off consciousness immediately. One cannot resist it. It is Stendhal's syndrome. The beauty is intolerable. Something similar can occur in the true, for example, the high vibrations of energy attention that cannot be assimilated by our organism consciousness. Then drowsiness occurs, and one can really fall asleep. Creation through higher soul quality. It is therefore very important to pay attention to the qualitative requirements of co-creation during the shift or vibration increase that is now atmospheric. We must, as it were, load the new energies so that the new Aquarian human values can form within us. In the equilateral and dynamically coherent triangle of unity, freedom, and love, co-creation is a certainty. However, when striving for separate unity, freedom, or love in the dialectic, legal boundaries, eventually block our progress. Our eyes and ears then run into these boundaries in their perceptions, no matter how much we can be moved by beauty and lulled to sleep by the true. What perception can lead to a disinterested contemplation in which our will and desire do not come to stand between us and what we perceive? Is the perception of the soul the organ of perception that connects us to the entrance of intuition, namely the third eye, is the gateway to higher dimensions, at the same time connected with unity and love? Is co-creation of this perception then without desire and without will? Does something come about, that is to say, is there energy formation when everything has become static and silent through neutrality and objectivity? Can the co-creation of reality actually take place? Yes, it can. For the new consciousness forms itself according to the will of the all, which now reigns from the perception of the soul, from the third eye. The will and the longing of the one unlimited creator, which correspond with the human being who came out of duality and became whole in the one, through which the co-creating power of love can take place as an energy transfer to reality. That love does not attach itself to objects, people, nature, but releases the light forces to make the transition to Aquarius possible.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed it. If you wish to support us in reaching more people, like our posts, rate us with 5 stars on iTunes, leave a positive comment where you can, or share our content on your social media.